Subway killer or Subway hero? We're going to talk about that on Charlie Crimebuster's Crime Talk, along with James Buckland.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
We want to welcome you to our program tonight. James, we kind of had a little detour here in this particular series.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, let's tell the folks where they can find us on other places to find other episodes.
Well, I've got a little bit of information that I think everybody will enjoy. We're actually going to be going on TikTok with all of our Crime Talk stories.
Oh,
so
great.
We're not going to be doing our podcast there. The podcasts are going to be carried at charliecrimebuster.com. But our shows like tonight, our Crime Talk, our True Crime Talk, as they join the Charlie Crime train, they can join it at TikTok/Charlie Crimebuster.
Wow.
You are on TikTok now. So Charlie, we're now reaching to new realms.
New realms, huh? On TikTok. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. They can also reach out with a shout out, as we call it, at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's Charlie Crimebuster, all one word, at gmail.com. Or you can text us at 407-917-2211, 407-917-2211. And you can also visit peacemakernetwork.com. And there you can become a supporter of not only the podcast, but also the men and women, first responders, our law enforcement folks, and the military by becoming a badge member. That's badge, BADGE member, for as little as $3 a month. And Charlie, that's less than a penny a day. Very affordable.
Yep. And
Again,
that's very timely, Veterans Day,
that's
this
right.
week.
That's
and
right.
So
that's right.
part of that group of people that we support is happens to be the military, the brave men and women of military,
That's right. Again, that's peacemakernetwork.com, folks, in case you want to go over there. Also, if you're a true crime junkie, we would like to invite you to binge-cast with us and listen to some of our previous podcasts.
Binge-cast, I like that.
Binge-cast.
Yep.
charliecrimebuster.com. That's charliecrimebuster.com. Or also, they're also carried on YouTube at Charlie Crimebuster. So we're there as well.
There you go. A whole bunch of places where they can find us and be a part of the program. By the way, James, if somebody was to reach out with a shout out, what kind of things could they inquire about?
If they reach out with a shout out, they can actually ask for, they can say they have a suggestion for a new show,
There you go.
maybe a crime story that they've heard about and would like for us to maybe feature, or maybe even ask for an update on one of our previous episodes. If maybe we followed up on something, we just haven't touched on it yet. They can ask about that. And also they can also disagree with us. If we've formed an opinion about a certain case or a certain situation, they're more than welcome to. This is a free space. They're more than welcome to object to anything that we say. So, and again, that's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com.
We call it a safe space, right?
It's a safe space. That's right.
Reach out with a shout out. We'd love to hear from you. In fact, part of the reasons we're into what we are tonight is some people have contacted me with some interest in tonight's case. So, James, ready to get right into it?
We are ready to get in there. We are ready.
Let's go.
So why did we take a break in the current series, the Mendez brothers? Why did we break the case on? Why did we break that series?
Well, that's a good question, by the way. Basically, we did it because there is a current trial right now that has national implications. And in fact, not only is it a current trial and their second week of trial, but it also, what the jury decides in this case, James, I believe will impact a great number of other situations that could come to light in the future. So I think that the way the trial goes will not only impact the people's lives involved in the trial, but it might impact other people's lives as well. So we thought we ought to jump on this while we could, while there's a lot of interest in it. And, we oftentimes like to bring the type of cases that are ongoing at that very moment so that it can be current Now we'll do old cases and cold cases, but it's always good to be right there on the front line when it's actually happening,
Right.
just like we did in the Rush trial,
Exactly.
and several other trials that we've been a part of. So that's why we took a little detour. We are going to come back, and by the way, there's an update in the Menendez brothers, and that is the fact that DA who had actually was going to request to the judge for resentencing. Well, guess what? He got beat in the election
He did.
and he will no longer be the DA
That's right.
coming up. And the other DA, I heard him the other day. He was asked about this case, the Menendez case, whether he too would recommend the resentencing, and he said, "Well, not so fast." He said, "I want to take a look at it. I want to talk to other people. I want to talk to a lot of other people involved in it, and I don't really know what I'm going to do at this moment, but I'm going to certainly give it clear thought and then come with a decision from there." So he may even object to this
Mm-hmm.
request from this
Mm-hmm.
particular DA.
It sounds like he wants to really give it a real good, thorough look over.
Right. And there are a lot of people, James, that thinks that the DA in this Menendez case, that a lot of his motivation was political because
Mm-hmm.
he was coming up for reelection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this new DA has the same feeling you and I do that they committed a crime and therefore they should do the
Right.
time.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. No doubt about it. So we did take a break because again, this is current, and we want people to know exactly what is taking place. This, of course, was what happened, just recently
Mm-hmm.
when this young man, Daniel Penny, was a Marine, had been in the Marine Corps. Now he's a student, and he got on the subway and found this guy that he thought was endangering other lives, put him in a chokehold, and after he did that, sometime later, the guy died, and now he is on trial for manslaughter. So that's the one
Wow.
we're covering now.
So, but who is the other subway hero you talked about in the podcast?
Well, yeah, in the podcast, and probably a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
have always thought this. Hey, this really triggers something else, and it certainly does. It was back in December of 1984. A guy by the name of Bernard Goetz.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he actually shot four young black guys on a New York subway there in Manhattan
Mm-hmm.
after they attempted to rob him. Now, unlike this situation, all four of these victims survived, but there was one, a guy by the name of Daryl Cabby. Unfortunately, he was paralyzed, suffered brain damage as a result of his injuries. And
Mm-hmm.
Bernie, he fired at four unarmed black men on that subway. He was charged with attempted murder, assault, reckless endangerment, and several firearm offenses. And
Mm-hmm.
he had been targeted in the past, so he too, just like it's saying about this one, he too felt that his life was in danger and
Mm-hmm.
felt that he was actually that his motivation was self-defense.
Right. Right. So, but why is the history of the New York subway important in this case?
Well, most of us probably that are listening to this have not been on a New York subway. And all we know is what we see on TV and in
Mm-hmm.
movies and this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it has quite a history. It was in the early 1900s that the subway was opened there. And during the 1970s, a couple of things happened. Number one, there was a big financial crunch, which impacted law enforcement and the ability to protect the subways. And also, crime just really skyrocketed. There were the police force, because they had to cut back the police force, the transit cops, they were down over, I get this, James, over 2,000 officers they were
Hmm.
down. So the police presence wasn't there.
Wow.
And this was a subway where the 14,000 felonies were committed annually. And in the city of New York City at that time, the whole city was under a crime wave. There were 600,000 felonies
Oh my goodness.
annually in New York City, and
Wow.
2,000 of them resulted in deaths. So this was an extremely high crime time,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of crime was taking place in the subway. Now you got to picture yourself. You're down there. I called it the belly of the beast. You're
Right.
down there in these dark dungeons, graffitis all over the place.
Hmm.
All kinds of weirdos are getting on the train. A lot of them are robbing people. They're raping people. They're killing people.
Right.
And so it was a very very dangerous time to be on the subway.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that was the atmosphere at this particular time. Now the atmosphere is a little different this time, but nonetheless, that atmosphere was people basically, James, are ready to fight back against crime.
Yeah. Yeah. But how is this particular case with Daniel Penny different from Bernie's?
Well, one of the things different is that the crime is not as high as it was then. The statistics says that crime is down. However, violent crime is still rising. And even though we might get into the statistics, I think a lot of people all across the country right now are saying that the statistics may say crime is down, but it doesn't feel like crime is down.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's still a dangerous picture, the crime is down. There are a lot of transit cops out there right now, but I think more importantly, particularly you got to realize where this is taking place. It's taking place in New York City.
Hmm. Hmm.
And New York City is very liberal. And there is, in the presence of New York City, a pretty substantial, what I call an anti-police movement. This is where defund the police comes to matter.
Ah. Hmm.
And then, you've got a whole lot of people out there that just really think that, and they're saying that we need to treat these cases as a mental case rather than, a criminal case. But the fact is, James, even though somebody may be mentally unstable, they're still dangerous.
Right.
And if
Right.
they're dangerous, you should have the right to protect yourself and protect others. But
Absolutely.
it's a different mood, though, this day and time where Penny is facing these charges than it was when Bernie was facing those charges.
Well, how did Bernie's trial end, though?
Well, first of all, let me say, he was held a hero all nationally. Even
Mm.
the media,
Okay.
the press picked it up, so he was called the subway hero, the Avenger, the Angel Avenger, all these sort of things. But what a lot of people didn't realize, just like in all heroes, their feet is still clay, and they're still human, and
Right.
they're not all
Right.
perfect. And Bernie wasn't perfect either. In fact, once this happened, he actually took off and ran up to New Hampshire, stayed away for quite a while, and finally then turned himself in. But when he came back and he was talking to the detective, Bernie was pretty serious about inflicting harm on these guys. I mean, he was shooting his gun and he basically looked at one guy and he said, "Hey, you don't look so well. Let me shoot you again." So, and then, he said he ran out of bullets then he was going to take his keys and gouge their eyes out. So, this avenging angel had a streak of the devil in him, going after these guys. But actually, the jury actually found him only guilty of one count of carrying an unlicensed firearm. They acquitted him of all the remaining charges, you see. And
Wow.
for that firearm offense, he served, I think, 8 months of a 1 year sentence. And so, the jury said, hey, we believe this guy was protecting himself, and they actually ruled on his side.
Well, you mentioned there were some things that people may not know about Bernie, this hero. So what were those?
Well, as what I mentioned earlier, the fact that he had this streak about him that he really wanted to inflict pain. But one other thing they may not know was that also he had actually been accosted on the subway before this.
Ah,
So when
he was prepared.
these guys came in and demanded his money. He knew what was going to take place next,
Uh-huh.
and he brought a weapon with him, and he fired that weapon.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, he had to protect himself. I mean, yeah. I mean, who wouldn't do that? I mean, that's kind of human nature, isn't it? If you've had
Yeah,
the
I mean,
situation before,
to
you
me
come
it is,
prepared to,
yeah.
you come
And
prepared to
you got to
defend.
realize that there were four of him, only one of him, you know.
Exactly. Exactly. He was, yeah.
So there were
Yeah.
four against one.
He was outnumbered.
Uh,
Yeah.
he was far outnumbered, you know. He
Yep.
had already been hurt, injured on the subway riding it before.
Hmm.
Again, remember this is a much more dangerous time than even now.
Right.
There were fewer cops out there. There was a lot of felonies being committed every year. People again were robbed, they were raped, and they were killed. And so he thought that he ought to carry a weapon, and he used his weapon to defend himself.
Yeah. And there you go. There you go. So tell us about this crazy crook story again.
Ah, crazy crook story. Well, we said in the crazy crook story that we have found in all these stories that alcohol does not do these crazy crooks any good.
Nope.
These guys, man and woman, they kind of got a little carried away. I said in the podcast it was like they were going on their own two-person spring break. They got drunk, decided to break into there in Wales, overseas. It was enclosure like SeaWorld is today. They decided to get in there, and they got in there and decided to swim with the dolphins. Then they decided to extinguish a fire extinguisher in the shark tank. And I mean, they were just carrying on, having a good time. And, before they left, they thought they would take a souvenir. Guess what souvenir they took?
Tell me.
They took a penguin, a penguin by the name of Dirk.
Dirk. They took Dirk,
Yeah,
huh?
they took Dirk. Now, imagine this the next day, they wake up, they're hungover. And,
Uh-huh.
people that drink a lot and they get hungover and they have these blackouts and everything, oftentimes they'll wake up and be very surprised at what they see. But can you imagine being any more surprised than waking up the next day, looking in your apartment and seeing a penguin in your apartment?
Oh my word.
So Dirk the Penguin was there. I will say I'll give them, some credit. They did the best they could with Dirk. They put him in a cold shower. They fed him, but then I guess they just realized that they probably were not in any shape to take care of any pet, let alone a penguin.
Right, right.
So they decided they were going to take and let him out of one of the canals there. And I don't know why, why they thought that they could get away with this. I mean, imagine yourself, you're sitting there, you look out the window and you see these two people walking around with a penguin. That's
Uh-huh.
pretty noticeable, isn't
That's
it?
pretty noticeable. Yep.
Kind of hard to hide a penguin if you're walking around with a penguin. And so, of course, they saw this couple releasing Dirk into this canal, and they called the popo, and then it was all over. The police came and made their arrest.
Oh my goodness. My goodness.
But now,
So
wait a minute. I know everybody out there, you know what they're thinking. Well, what happened to the penguin, right?
right,
We don't
exactly.
care about this couple,
Uh,
They could go to jail for life, or they could take him out and hang him or whatever in the world. But what about Dirk? What about the penguin? Well,
yep.
folks, just relax, rest assured. They rescued Dirk and they took him right back to SeaWorld, and he got there unharmed. So Dirk
Oh, good.
is okay. Dirk is okay.
Good. He was fed and got a cold shower, so he should be good.
Yep, yep, yep. He should be in good shape.
Well, back to our subway story. Tell us about the victim in this case.
Well, the victim is a guy by the name of Jordan Neely.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
he's
saw
been
some footage
described,
on this.
yeah, he's been described by numerous people. The media has taken, most of the media has, taken the idea that here is a poor victim. He's homeless. Some people said he was a Michael Jackson impersonator. He could cut up like that. One even described him as an artist. Now, I don't know, what if he had done any any real art. I guess maybe he did graffiti. I don't know, but nonetheless, it almost makes him seem like he's just innocent and that this Marine went into action, put him in this chokehold for no reason at all. But that's not true. On the other hand, in the court, there is just as many witnesses, even those who are called by the prosecution, that are saying one after the other that they were afraid that he jumped on that
Yeah.
train.
Yeah.
He was wild,
Yep.
he was threatening people. He was saying, "You got to give me food. You got to give me this. You got to give me money. You got to give me that." If you, he even threatened to kill people. One lady had a child, and she put the stroller between her and the child, and she was afraid for her life.
Mm.
So this was a very frightening situation for the people that are on that train. But however, if you were to read what a lot of the press say, you would think, well, this is just a poor guy having a mental breakdown
Hmm.
and did not deserve happening to him. Now, nobody deserves to die. We'll say that for true.
Right.
But, if it was somebody, said the other day, said, talking about this, well, what if that was your son? Would you like that to happen to your son? Well, no, of course not. But let me ask you this: what if your daughter was on that train and that guy
Hmm.
jumped on there, and
Right.
there wasn't anybody between
Right.
you and them? How would you feel then?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Daniel Penny, actually, who is a former Marine, and he had some training. He took him down, put
Martial
him in a
arts.
choke, yeah, put him in a
Yeah.
chokehold,
Hmm.
and unfortunately afterwards, Neely died. So here
As
is
a
a
result,
guy.
he died as a result of the injury.
Well, it certainly was a contributing factor, but I saw the video probably as you saw it, and actually the police are all saying that they checked and he had a pulse
Uh-huh.
afterwards. That they could feel a pulse, faint pulse, but they could feel a pulse. So the question is, was his death a direct result of the chokehold, or was the chokehold just a contributing factor of many that
Hmm.
caused his death? And I'm sure that's going to be some of the argument that they're making in court right now.
Was there an autopsy? Did he have any drugs in his system?
I think there was,
Hmm.
there was an autopsy. Of course, the medical examiner, actually claimed it a homicide. And, people don't, a lot of people, when they see homicide, oh, that means he was murdered. It doesn't mean he was murdered. Homicide just means that this person died at the hands of someone else. It
Right.
doesn't mean that that person is guilty
Right.
because you have a right to defend yourself. Not
Right.
only do you have a right to defend yourself, you have a right to defend others.
Exactly.
And so even if Daniel did not feel in his own mind that that there was such a threat that he feared for his own life, he could fear for the safety of other people.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's why he took action. And as they say, no good deed goes undone. And now he's on trial, for a good part of his life, if he's convicted.
Wow. Well, tell us about the trial itself.
Well, the trial itself is, they say it's going to take about 6 weeks, they think. And when you look at the trial, there is several things involved. There's a jury. They have seven women and five men, and of that seven women and five men, four of them are people of color.
Hmm.
And they're making a really big deal about this right now because of the fact that they're trying to paint Daniel, who is a white person. They're trying to paint him into some racist person, and they're trying to make it about that. And the defense, on the other hand, have really shown in the trial they've tried their best to keep people of color off the jury. And they've actually used 10 of their allowed eliminations to strike people of color off the jury.
Hmm.
So the prosecution now is saying that the defense is, racist. At the same time, the defense has come back now and asked for a mistrial because the prosecution brought this guy on and he just ranted about how white people are bad and white people are terrible, and that Daniel was a racist, and so they're saying that that's unfair to Daniel, so they're asking for a mistrial. So, in fact, the guy that they've got up to say these things about him has also been guilty of actually taking a baseball bat and assaulting another person. So, just a lot of give and take, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah. Interesting scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I think that's going to cause a lot of attention is the chokehold.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, definitely.
he brought him down with a chokehold,
Yep.
and you know, remember this is after George Floyd, and so there is a feeling out there, and a lot of police departments now. And chokeholds, by the way, uh, law enforcement's been taught to do them. I was taught as a young deputy, young officer. I was taught to use the chokehold if it comes down to your life or somebody else's life
Hmm.
that you know, and you're down, you can't get you your weapon, then if there's nothing else you can do, you use the chokehold. The chokehold is basically where you put somebody in a chokehold and you're doing one or two things. You're either cutting off the air or you're cutting off the blood flow to the neck.
Right.
Now, if you do it correctly, you cut off that blood flow to the neck and no oxygen, then it will cause somebody to pass out.
Right.
And it just basically we used to even call it a sleeper hold. We used
Right.
to call it a sleeper hold, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if it's done correctly, it can actually do that. And so he did use that. And keep in mind, the chokehold has been used. Police officers have been taught it. It's used in martial arts,
Hmm.
and it's also used. I found out in doing some research that even in training of military, that they
Right.
are trained in combat to use that chokehold.
Right.
So he used the chokehold. Now, a lot of police departments, policy wise, they've said that it's not our policy to use the chokehold anymore. There are some police departments say it's not our policy to use the chokehold unless there's no other way that you can protect yourself.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if there's no other way you can protect yourself, then you have the right to use lethal force
Hmm.
if it comes to that to protect yourself. So there's going to be a whole lot of controversy about the fact that he used a chokehold.
Well, how do you think that the trial is going to turn out, Charlie?
Well, this is going to be a real tough one. I'm thinking from what I'm hearing with all the testimony from a lot of people on that train who were saying that they were frightened, that they were really scared. It is my hope because if I was on the jury, I would certainly acquit him.
Hmm.
Uh, and I hope that happens. But on the other hand, keep in mind this is New York City,
Yep.
and New York City, there is that sentiment against the police, and unfortunately, I don't think that Daniel Penny should even be considered in the same category as a police officer.
Right.
A police officer would have a little more up to date training on the chokehold. He did not have that up to date training. The only training he had was in hand to hand
Military.
combat as a
Hmm.
military.
Right.
But a lot of things have changed from time to time. So I don't think it's really. I think of anything, he ought to have better consideration than a police officer, because here is a citizen that's doing what he can to protect others on that train.
Right.
He wasn't a cop. He didn't have to do it. He wasn't sworn to do that, as a cop is sworn to do that. He could have just, like so many people, say, "I don't want to get involved,"
Hmm.
but in fact, he did. The thing I guess I would say to the people out there is simply this, James. Just think if your daughter was on that train,
Hmm.
or your wife was on that train, and this maniac gets on, and he looks wild. He threw his coat down, he put his fist up like he was going to fight. Uh, I would have hoped that there would be somebody like Daniel there to protect my daughter,
Right.
my wife in that
Right.
situation.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
would certainly say, nobody is glad that this young man died as a result of this. Nobody says that that's a good thing. But if anything, he is the one who started the events that started this whole thing happening that caused his death. It wasn't Daniel that jumped on the bus like or on the train like that. It was this guy. It was this guy who got up there and started really threatening people's lives. So yeah, I would vote to acquit, but we'll have to see what the jury does. Right?
That's right. That's right. So,
What do you think about it?
I think he should be acquitted. I
Yeah.
mean, I have daughters, and if one of my daughters were on that train and he was threatening them, and there was someone that could prevent them from getting hurt, yes,
Oh
I
yeah.
would certainly
Yeah.
acquit. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd like to see what other people think out there. And again, you have a
Yeah,
right to disagree.
that's right. They
We
have a
would
right to
love
disagree.
we would love to hear from them. You can reach us, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. I'd like to see what some of our folks out there that are listening think about this whole trial.
Well, and like we've done in the past, I'll put a poll out there and we'll have people respond to the poll. We'll get
I
the
think
feedback
that
here online.
I think that would be a good thing. And folks, if you're waiting to hear more about the Menendez brothers, we'll be right back to that story. We're going to follow this one a little bit, see where it goes, but we will finish because the Menendez brothers' new update is not over yet. It's
That's
untelling
right.
what's going to happen.
That's right. Yeah, there's still a lot unknown in that case. Good. Well, thank you, Charlie. Look forward to hearing what's
Well,
going
thank
on
you,
this
James,
weekend.
and we appreciate you folks that have joined with us. By the way, for you folks that know that James and I are working out of Florida, I've heard they've got another storm out there brewing, James.
That's right. I did. I
Yeah,
saw that too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and said next week we're going to know about it. So, folks, say a prayer for us. We've had our fill of them. We've
we've
had
had our fill.
two hurricanes have hit us, pretty well dead on here
Yep.
in Florida. So, pray that storm away, right?
That's right. Pray it away.
So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep, for the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.